Hello, everyone. This is Patrick Valdez, your friendly neighborhood immigration attorney, coming to you to give you some information about becoming a United States citizen. I always tell my clients that if they expect to make the United States their home, if they expect to live in the United States for the rest of their lives, they should really take the time to become a U.S. citizen. This is the most certain way to protect one's presence in the United States if you're an immigrant. It gives you the right to vote. It gives you the right to carry a U.S. passport. And it also gives you the right to return to the United States even after extended periods of time away from the United States. It solidifies, it confirms your right to a pension under our Social Security laws, and it really protects you in a variety of ways. And I strongly encourage you to apply if you are still a legal permanent resident. Now, there are several requirements to become a naturalized United States citizen. The first threshold issue that oftentimes a lot of people forget about is that you have to have been granted legal residency factually in a factual correct way and in a legally correct way. And so what I typically do is I pull a copy of all prior applications for all types of immigration benefits that my clients have been granted, whether it be a student visa application or a tourist visa application, if we can get a hold of that. And of course, your prior application for legal residency. And I check those thoroughly. I make certain that dates, times, and locations and all representations in those applications were truthful. And then I also make absolutely certain that the decision that the government made to grant that visa or to grant that legal residency was legally correct under the circumstances. Once you get that through that threshold, the application and the requirements are relatively straightforward. Here they are. One, you had to have be a legal permanent resident for at least 5 years. At least 5 years as a legal permanent resident. There's an exception to that, which I will get to shortly. Two, you have to show 5 years of good moral character. Now, good moral character is like a matter of law. There's certain things that could happen that could prevent the government to find that you have good moral character, even if they want to grant that finding. And then also, good moral character is a matter of discretion. The government kind of has to think you deserve to live here and that you're a person of good moral character in their better judgment. Okay? That's one of the requirements. And the last requirement is that you have to demonstrate fluency in the English language. You have to be able to read English, you have to be able to write in English, and you have to be able to complete your interview in the English language. Now, you can speak with an accent, your English doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to, for the most part, be able to speak and communicate, read and write in the English language. Now, there's some exceptions to these requirements. The first one is that if you have been a legal permanent resident for 3 years, you're married to a U.S. citizen, and that U.S. citizen has been a U.S. citizen for 3 years. You don't have to wait 5 years to apply for citizenship. You simply have to wait to 3. And the statutory period of time to evaluate your residency, whether it be good moral character or the fact that you've held a U.S. residency, is shortened to 3 years. You don't have to wait the 5 years. So that's one exception. Also, in terms of the literacy requirements, if you've been a legal permanent resident for at least 20 years and you're 50 years of age, you can take the test and complete your interview process in your own language, whatever native language you speak, and the literacy requirement is waived. That also applies if you've been a legal permanent resident for at least 15 years and you're 55 years of age or older. That waiver also applies. There's also a medical exemption that applies to people who suffer from a disease or a condition that impacts their ability to learn new things, and also or a condition that impacts their memory. If you get that exemption signed by a doctor with a very specific diagnosis in terms of what that condition is and how it impacts your ability to learn new things and to recall facts and remember things, you can get the literacy requirements exempted. You don't have to speak English so long as you get that medical exemption signed by a licensed doctor. Now, before somebody applies for naturalization, they should keep some things in mind. One, The government is going to thoroughly investigate your background. They are going to pull your fingerprints. They're going to check your criminal background if you have one. They're going to expect you to be compliant with the tax code. And like I had said earlier, they're going to look at your immigration history, any stops at the border, and also any prior applications for immigration benefits are going to be examined. It's very, very important for somebody to understand. In terms of the tax code, anybody who's applying to become a U.S. citizen needs to be compliant with the tax code. So if you haven't paid or filed taxes for quite some time, or if there are irregularities in your representations in those tax returns, you really need to get those fixed before you even attempt to become a U.S. citizen and go through this process. Find an accountant, a licensed accountant, to review your taxes if you have any questions. Get a copy of your tax transcript to make sure that everything is in order with that, and make absolutely certain that your taxes are truthful and you've declared all of your income, including income that you've earned in cash. Also, if you owe a debt to the Internal Revenue Service, if you're compliant with the tax code and you owe a debt, that's not necessarily a problem in terms of becoming a U.S. citizen. The government's going to want to make absolutely certain that you have a payment plan to pay that debt and that you are compliant with that payment plan. I have had clients that have had significant debts with the Internal Revenue Service, and they've been granted U.S. citizenship with showing that they make a monthly payment to the IRS, and their tax returns were legitimately filed, timely filed, and truthful. Okay, so bear that in mind. Also, if you are a non-custodial parent of any child living anywhere in the world, in order to show good moral character, you're going to have to demonstrate that you're making monthly child support payments. They could be made formally through a court order. Sometimes they're deducted from somebody's payroll, or they could be paid informally. A check or even cash could be handed to the custodial parent on a regular basis, whether it be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, what have you, but it has to be on a regular, consistent basis for a regular amount. If it's paid informally, oftentimes the custodial parent will be asked to put something in writing, a notarized letter, verifying that he or she is receiving those monthly child support payments, and that includes children that are living outside the country. If you have biological children under the age of 18 living outside the United States, the U.S. government is going to expect you to show that you're paying child support to those children. Doesn't matter if it's from a prior marriage or a prior relationship, none of that matters. You're going to have to identify all the children that you've ever had at any time in your life in your application, and if any of those children are under the age of 18, during the statutory period of having to show good moral character, you're going to have to show that you are making monthly child support payments in order to have any chance of your application for U.S. citizenship being granted, okay? Also, during this process, the government's going to pull your fingerprints electronically, and they're going to see if you've ever been arrested. And the application asks if you've ever been arrested, and if you've ever received a traffic ticket, if you've ever been stopped at the border. All arrests and apprehensions are going to have to be disclosed in the application. That's why a thorough background check before you submit an application for citizenship, for naturalization, is critical, because what you don't want to do is speculate on any of this information or omit any information that is asked of you in this process, okay? If you've been arrested by the police and if you've suffered criminal convictions, that's not necessarily the end of the world. There are criminal convictions that, although not good, don't have dire immigration consequences. And then, of course, there are criminal convictions that do have dire immigration consequences. And it's absolutely critical that you have a licensed attorney evaluate that. Sometimes a person who is eligible to become a U.S. citizen is also at risk of being placed in removal proceedings, at risk of having his or her residency taken away from them. And that's a decision that you should make with a licensed attorney to weigh those factors, which would include a worst case scenario. What would happen if I'm placed in removal proceedings? Do I have any defenses? And that's something that would have to be evaluated. Okay. Also, there's little things that have to be considered as well in the application. Are you compliant with selective service, right? Young men are required to register with selective service in the event that they need to be called to arms and serve the country. Also, if you've made any false claims of U.S. citizenship, if you've ever registered to vote, even inadvertently, mistakenly, all those things are very, very, very important. And those questions are very detailed in the application for naturalization. So it's important that you go through the application very carefully, you answer them truthfully. And if you respond in the affirmative, if you say yes, that I made a false claim of U.S. citizenship while I was a legal permanent resident, or any time in my life, or I inadvertently registered to vote, or I was arrested, I was stopped at the border, all those things can be problematic in this process. And we at the Valdez Law Firm strongly urge you to contact a licensed attorney to review the consequences of those events in your life, to make certain that your application for citizenship doesn't jeopardize your residency. All right, that's a proper evaluation that has to be done every time you submit an application for naturalization. And if your application for U.S. citizenship jeopardizes your residency, you really need to think very carefully on whether or not you should submit the application for naturalization at all. Lastly, a lot of people as legal permanent residents, they spend quite a bit of time outside the United States, and that could be problematic. During the 5-year period of time, you have to spend 51%, the majority of the time has to be spent here in the United States. You cannot live outside the United States and expect to keep your legal residency. If you're living outside the United States and you have a resident card that you use to enter and exit the country, but you spend the majority of your time outside the country, that could be very problematic in the context of an application for U.S. citizenship. If they discover that you've abandoned your residency, they could terminate it, take it away from you, and allow you to leave the country, and you can live in your native country wherever you're living outside the country. But that could be very problematic. And so you don't want to submit an application for naturalization, for U.S. citizenship, if you have spent extended periods of time outside the country as a legal permanent resident. Okay? Very, very, very important. Now, say, for example, your application is granted. The officer that conducted your interview, it recommends that your application be approved, and you receive something in the mail showing that it was approved and that you need to attend a swearing-in ceremony, which is the final step of becoming a U.S. citizen. During that period of time when your application is granted, but before you have been sworn in, you are a legal permanent resident. You're still a legal permanent resident. The government continues to do its background checks, and it is up to you to make absolutely certain that you do nothing that would undermine the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. Please don't get arrested. Comply with all the laws. Make absolutely certain that your representations to any government official anywhere, whether it be state, local, federal, or all those representations, are truthful. You attend the swearing-in ceremony. You swear to be loyal to the United States, and you're granted a certificate. The first thing you should do is apply for a U.S. passport. You're now entitled to a U.S. passport. Get one and carry it with you, and make absolutely certain that you always have a current U.S. passport. In the event that you have to prove that you are a U.S. citizen, you want that as proof. Okay? 2, register to vote. You have the right to vote. Your vote is your voice. And please, I strongly urge you to participate in the democratic process. It is a wonderful thing. So please take the time to do that. If you have any questions about this process, if you have any concerns about your immigration history, your criminal history, or anything in your personal history that could be relevant to the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, please call us at the Valdez Law Firm. Our telephone number is 310-330-0511, 310-330-0511. We are standing by to assist you. Thank you very much.